How's it going, guys? So in today's tutorial, we're going to have a lot of fun with geometry nodes, and we're going to create this really microscopic looking, kind of almost space looking render animation. So it's going to be really fun. I created this artwork for the Asus Pro Artist Awards. If you want to learn more about that, it's got up to $100,000 in prizes. It's currently going on right now. You can check out my last video for all the information on that. So we'll get into the tutorial right after this quick shout out. Welcome to RealTime Materials, a collection of customizable procedural materials compatible with Eevee and Cycles. With over 6 years of experience, I have created an add-on currently containing 240 materials across 14 surface categories. This add-on will speed up your workflow, allowing you to stay creative while maximizing your artistic output. You might be thinking, what about image textures? Image textures are easy to set up but don't give you any control. RealTime Materials are loaded with custom properties, giving you the freedom to change roughness, color, and all kinds of patterns. You can change the shape of wood, the direction of cloth weave, and the size of scratches, among many other parameters. Even if you already know how to make procedural materials, imagine the time you will save if you could apply those materials in one easy click. All right, we're here, and like I said, geometry nodes, but first we need to do a very simple amount of modeling. So we're gonna go ahead and get a Ecosphere. And then right here on this drop down, we're gonna go to 1 on the subdivisions. Next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit tab and I'm gonna hit I twice. We're gonna double click I, and we're gonna bring these into maybe about this size. We want them to be really small. Now we're gonna extrude them out, but first we need to hit this drop down and do individual origins so it actually extrudes them correctly outwardly. So now we're just going to hit E and move your mouse. So I'm moving it this direction, which is kind of bringing him out like that. And there we go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go up here and click on the face selection tool, and I'm going to hit Control plus, and that's just going to go ahead and select all these. Now I'm going to hit Control I, which inverts that selection. I'm going to hit X and click faces. Now we very quickly modeled these spikes, which we're now, not spikes, but whatever, which we're now going to go ahead and add a modifier to them. So make sure you're selected here, add a modifier, and we're going to get in a remesh modifier. Now with this remesh, you can use your voxel size to, like it says, remesh it. And the idea behind this is two things. Adding geometry. So if we go to edit mode, just does that. We're adding geometry, and we're also adding a very just jagged and weird look to this. And if we want to go further with adding this weirdness to it, what we can do is we can displace it. So I'm going to click new here. I'm going to click this right here, image or movie, and we're going to go here to clouds. And then I'm going to bring my depth to 2 and then my size up maybe to like 3. And then we can go ahead and bring that strength down. So bring that strength to 0. We're going to go back to the original, and you can really have some fun with that if you want, but I'm not going to do it. But there's some more animatability for you later. But here we go. We have our piece, and it's going to be really cool. So let's go ahead and head to geometry nodes. So click on geometry nodes. I'm going to go ahead and do that to kill that window. I'm going to click new to make a new node tree. So first off, let's turn this into the little bars and wires. So we're going to get a mesh to curves. So Shift A, search mesh to curve, plop that there, and we're going to get a curve to mesh. And we're going to do there. And then now we need to actually turn this into mesh because there's nothing there. So we're going to get a circle, a curve circle. Now the size of the circle, the roundness is going to be the thickness essentially. So if we plug the curve into the profile curve, your radius 0.001 is just about what we want. Maybe 0.002 is going to be feasible for this. And what's really cool is if you play with your voxel size, you can really create some cool motion graphics kind of backgrounds for this and having a lot of fun. So there's a lot of possibilities here outside of just this design that I came up with. Now we need to instance some stuff on this. So we're going to get a join geometry node. So, oops, that's join strings. Join geometry right here. And then let's get an instance. We're going to do an instance on points node. And then I'm going to put geometry to points, and then instances into the geometry of the join geometry nodes. So let's go ahead and Shift A, go to the mesh primitives and get an Ecosphere. and then plug that into the instances, and then give maybe 3 subdivisions for that, and bring your radius down to whatever your desired scale is. So I'm going to go to 0.015. We're going to do 0.015 for me. There we go. I like that a lot. Cool. Now what I want to do is create a random selection of bigger spheres in this whole thing. First thing I want to do is kind of smooth out all of this. Right now it's jagged, so we're going to do search smooth, set shade smooth, put it there. We'll shade smooth our entire thing. So this is going to be a little more complicated than just instancing here, and so I'll show you why. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a mesh to points node. So mesh to points. And what I want to do is turn these faces into points, and I'll show you what that's going to do. So plug that into the mesh and plug this into the join geometry node. And now we have a bunch of points. So right now they're on the vertices. So a vertice has basically 4 points to it. And so what I'm going to do is actually a face has 4 points essentially. So I just want to put it in the middle of the face, not on the 4 points that surround it. So instead of vertices, I think I explained that right. Hope you get the idea. But we're going to choose faces, so we have basically the middle of this thing. So if I bring my radius down, hopefully that explains a little bit better. So as you can see, notice how they're on the points are on every single one of these spheres. I'm trying to instance basically on the middle. It's on this 4. I'm trying to do in the middle, essentially. So we're going to go here to faces, and then we'll scale them up just a little bit to get it back to where it was. So now that we have these faces done, basically, I'm going to go ahead and separate geometry. So we're going to get a separate geometry node here, and then we need something to actually separate the geometry. So we're going to get a random selection node. So random value, and we're going to go here to Boolean and plug the value into the selection. So what that's going to do is just give us a random amount of them. So if we bring up that probability, you can see them kind of popping up around. So maybe I can bring that radius up to 0.1. There we go. So there we have just more popping up and less. And that's just because I don't want the bigger spheres that we're about to add to be more. We just want a couple random ones. So now I can just go ahead and duplicate. I'm going to hit Shift D and duplicate this instance on points. Put it there. And then we're going to get another Ecosphere. So I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate this Ecosphere node. Put that there by hitting Shift D. Plug this, and we're just going to plug this Ecosphere into instance, and then give ourselves maybe 0.05. That looks about right. So there we go. Now we have this very organic looking randomness, and it's really cool. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to hit Alt D. It's very high poly, so it's going to be kind of slow. So you can skip this part if it's turning into being too heavy for your computer. Because I know it's kind of slowing me down a little bit. So there we go. We have this very organic looking craziness. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get an Ecosphere, just like that. Maybe subdivide it. We'll go back to layout, and let's go ahead and add some hair. So I'm going to go here to the hair section, right down. I'm going crazy. There we go. Hit the plus icon and click hair. So now it's going to extrude out all these hairs here. And then here, I'm going to go here to the material preview so we can look at this. I'm going to click on the camera icon, and we're going to go down to the hair section in Eevee. Make sure you're in the Eevee render engine. So I'm not even doing that. So click on hair and go to strip, and that's going to allow you to kind of render out this hair really cool. And then I'm going to go and bring down the number of hairs, because right now it's just way too many. All right, so now that we have our hair, we're going to go ahead, and we brought that number down around 400. You can bring it less or more. Now you can go to your hair shape and have some fun with that. So what you can do is say, like, have the root be really big, and then bring the scale just to have it at the root right there. So that has something cool, but that's a little ridiculous for my design. So I'm just going to go ahead and just bring it like this. Now we're going to go ahead and shape this hair. To viewport display, we're going to bring my strand steps to 8. And then right here on the render, also put your strand steps at 8. And that's going to allow you, when you go ahead and get your force field, your turbulence, you're going to go ahead and bring up that strength. So click on your turbulence, click on this button right here, and bring up that strength a little bit. And that's going to kind of wobble around your hair, and that's going to make it really nice. And then for me, I'm going to go ahead and make my hair a little bit thinner. So I'm going to make the diameter a little bit smaller here. I mean the root a little bit smaller because this is going to be very microscopic looking. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on show emitter and click show emitter. And that's going to basically delete that emitter from our view. So now we just have these weird strands coming through, and it looks really fun. And then last thing I'm going to do is get another Ecosphere. And this one's going to create a really cool light. So I'm going to bring my subdivisions to that, shade smooth, and now we have this. I'm going to go ahead and start shading. So we need to have 3 materials essentially. So for this ball here, I'm going to click new, and then I'm going to go ahead and on the principled, I'm going to make it metallic, and I'm going to make it right there medium light. And then I'm going to click on this Ecosphere. Now I'm going to click on this here, and I'm going to add 2 materials. I'm going to call this one, going to make it new. I'm going to make it metallic, and then I'm going to call it metal. And then we need one more. I'm going to click the plus icon, click new, and call it M-light, because we're going to make a light, but we are going to make it still metallic. And I'll explain that in a minute. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is apply these materials in geometry nodes. So we're hop over to geometry nodes, and we need to get a set material node. So I'm going to move these around so I can kind of see my 3 lines of 3 strands here. So essentially, if you've never used geometry nodes or new to it, you see these 3 strands. So one strand represents the bigger spheres, another strand represents these smaller spheres, and the other strand represents this kind of wireframe we've done based on these objects. That's why we joined all 3 sets. And what we need to do is set a material for each of those strands. So we have a set material node. So let me just show you, if I plugged the set material there and I put one of those materials on it, everything has that material. But here's what's cool about geometry nodes. I'm just going to go ahead and separate that set material and just put it there. And now only the bigger spheres have that. And I do want to have the M-light on the bigger spheres. And I'm going to go ahead and get the set material node, put it there, and then just go ahead and get the regular metal, and then duplicate the regular metal here on the wireframes. And now we have that. So now we can go into shading. So I'm going to click on the shader workspace. And actually, we do need to add that metal material to the hair, which is going to be this Ecosphere here. So we can just double click it and call it hair. So now that we have the hair, I'm going to go down here and just add that metal material to it. Boom. Now everything's nice and working together. So let's go here to shading and make sure I have this Ecosphere selected, and let's add some cool lights to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the regular view because we're going to make this lit up in a sense. So let's search color ramp and then get a layer weight as well. Plug facing into the factor and plug the color into the emission. And then we're just going to go ahead and make this a nice blue and then play with that and then bring up that emission strength considerably. And then you can also play with this. And it's okay for it to be a really hard edge on the light, and that's because it's going to be really bright and it's also going to be out of focus in our design. So it's okay that typically you'd want this to be a really smooth gradient. It's okay here. All right, so now we can go ahead and focus on, I'm going to click on this object here, and I'm going to get the M-light color. Oops. I'm going to go here to slot number 2. That's going to give us the M-light, and we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to click on this guy. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. So I'm going to highlight those guys, hit Control-C, click on this, and make sure we're in the M-light slot 2. I'm going to hit paste it with Control-V, and then plug color into emission. And in this case, we don't want to have that hard edge. And then we're going to bring up this, and then we can even use Fresnel possibly for this to make it a more subtle layer weight. There we go. I like that. So now we have this going on, and it's really cool and it's really fun. Now we can go into lighting. Make sure you're saving your scene. So I'm just going to call this tut, 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 tut. Now I'm gonna go ahead and get my camera. So I'm gonna bring my camera maybe right here. Get my camera, Control-Alt-0. I'm gonna snap it to the view, and then click on your camera, click on the little green camera icon here, and I'm gonna bring my focal length pretty wide. All right, now let's go here to this button, bring my world brightness to black. Already looks super, super cool. And let's get some volume going. So I'm gonna click on the volume tab, I'm gonna click none, and we're gonna go here to principled volume. So we're gonna do that, and then bring your density down a little bit. I'm gonna hit Shift A, and we're gonna get a point light. So let's bring this, I'm gonna hit G and bring my point light over here, make it really bright, and then make it nice and blue. Or you can go the opposite direction if you want, but I am going to make it nice and blue, like that. And then I'm gonna go ahead, and then here, I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate this light by hitting Shift D. And I'm just gonna put it directly behind the sphere. And what that's going to create, so make sure it's behind there, and that's gonna create this really nice kind of backlighting for this scene, and that's gonna make it really look just super cool. I'm gonna go ahead and make these materials here, make them very reflective. So here on the metal material, also bring that roughness down pretty significantly. So that's just gonna make it look really crispy, if that's a way to describe it. Now, in my camera, I'm gonna click on depth of field, and then let's go ahead and bring that f-stop all the way down and just play with our focus distance. Look how cool that is. And then we can bring your f-stop back up to widen that focus. Not a fan of how reflective the M-Light material is, so we're gonna bring that roughness up a little bit more so it reflects better. And there we have our scene, essentially. So if you hit G and middle click, you can kind of mess with this. And then I'm gonna go ahead and make this sphere a lot smaller. And then we can go back. And then these hairs, I'm gonna make them thicker. So as you're working, you're gonna probably be changing your design to make it fit what it's doing. And there we go, now we have something cool. Now, let's go ahead and animate this. The easiest way to animate this is just animating your hair on the turbulence. Notice I clicked on the turbulence, and then I went over to this little orange yellow icon, and you could just rotate this. Now this won't be a loop, so you don't have to worry about like 360 degree, whatever. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep this at 250 frames. And then I'm just going to also make sure I am in linear keyframing here. And then on the turbulence, let's just go ahead and add a keyframe, go to the very end, and just move it around to however much you want this to move. And if I just press play, it moves around really wobbly and really weird. And the next thing we can do is on my camera, I hit G and middle click to move it out. And then it looks like on the location, all three axes are moving. So I'm just gonna go ahead and click and slide, go to the very end, do something like this, and then do that again. And now we have a really cool scene with very low depth of field. And we can also make sure we're in the M-Light material. Let's go ahead and bring that emission strength up. It's really slow, but that's okay. Looks like we're working at 11 frames a second. And then if I were to render this, maybe at about right here, I'm gonna go ahead and actually click on my turbulence and move those hairs around. That looks better. Render image. And this is our really cool image that we just created. It's awesome, it's cool, it's fun, and relatively easy to create. And then let's go ahead and export this out. So you can click on the little printer icon, pick your resolution. Here, pick where you want to save it. We're going to go here to FFmpeg video if you don't want to do a PNG sequence. Otherwise, just leave it at PNG. On encoding, we're going to go here to MP4 and then output quality to perceptually lossless. And up here, render animation. At the end, you're going to have a really cool scene. So there you go. That's how you do it. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to check out the Pro Artist Creator Awards. And if you want to check out RealTime Materials, that is in the description. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.